Yeah, so this is what we're going to do, I think, is I'm going to set you guys up with a starting point here, and then you guys really take off on this discussion because, shoot, people heard me talk about this for like 4 hours yesterday. I've got all sorts of opinions and models, and people are going to see more stuff from me. I've already told Notre Dame what they need to do, and I'm going to be splitting the Big Ten into divisions. I'll be doing all that stuff, so be looking out, folks, for my posts, but I want to hear from these two. So let's start from this vantage point. What do you think is going to happen with Oregon? Based on what we've gathered today and late yesterday, it appears as though Oregon and Washington have applied for the Big Ten, but it appears as though the Big Ten is waiting on Notre Dame. That's what we're hearing. What do you think is going to happen with Oregon, and what would you like to have happen with Oregon?
Mike, you want that?
Yeah, so what I think happens is it comes down to financials, obviously. They're either going to go to 18 teams or 20 teams. The financial benefit comes at 18 teams unless you can find a significant fourth team. Obviously, you have 3 moneymakers already being mentioned. Washington, 19th biggest revenue generator in college football. Oregon, 14th, and Notre Dame was somewhere in the top 5. Oregon and Notre Dame have been rumored by, I think it was a Fox analyst, to be getting a lot of buzz to get in. But without a fourth pairing, I don't know if Washington or whoever they choose, it'll be Notre Dame and one of Washington and Oregon. So whichever one they don't choose is going to need the Big Ten to find another moneymaker to even have a chance to get in, because 18 fiscally makes the most sense for the Big Ten. I don't think they add a team like Stanford, who is a negative in the money pool. It just doesn't make a lot of financial sense, and if it don't make dollars, it don't make sense. So I don't really see a path for both Oregon and Washington to get in right now.
Good point here. Let me see if I can get the mic. There we go. Sorry, and if I got some wind out here, I had to move over here. I think my internet's a little dicey out here on the coast, but
it's much better.
Thanks for sticking with me, people. You know, I'm really torn. I think, I was talking yesterday on my channel, and I could have talked for an hour, just literally just thinking about all the different scenarios, the different options. It's really difficult. I was out golfing today. I golfed today with the former Duck fullback from the 70s, Jim Anderson, and he played with Dan Fouts. Ahmad Rashad's like his best friend. I mean, this is a guy who we were talking it all up, and he was like, I think it's really fun to go back to the Pac-8. I mean, he's ready to just let's tear the whole thing down and let's just have it be Oregon and Washington and just duke this thing out and see where we're at the end of the year. My son, who represents kind of the new age, I would say, of things, and who's seen a lot of wins at Autzen, he's kind of in the same boat where he's like, he doesn't think that Ducks would fare that well in the Big Ten. He would like to see us stay at home. And here I am in the middle of these two generations, and I'm thinking, shit, the only way we can do it to survive is to get to the Big Ten, or even take a bid somewhere else in the Big 12 or somewhere. Because in my mind, the Pac-12 is done as of yesterday.
I love Oregon.
So I kind of see it from all different sides, and I see the different perspectives. But looking at it from a kind of a viewpoint of a 30,000-foot viewpoint, everything is changing in college football, and everything will continue to change in college football. Oregon has done a fairly good job branding themselves as a national brand in a very rural part of the world. Again, I'm right here on the edge of the continent. I'm in the complete Pacific Northwest, tucked away from the rest of the world. And it feels like that, especially sometimes when you get into these conversations around national sports versus regional sports, And, Mike put up a great point talking about Oregon and Washington together. I originally thought that might be the only way to do it. But now looking into it deeper, I mean, I think there's a lot of things on the table. I do think that Oregon has to really understand exactly where they are in the world. Are they a top pick? No. Do I love the Ducks? Do we love the Ducks in the Duck community? Yes. But Notre Dame is a huge pull. We're not competing with Notre Dame on this level. And I look at it as if Big Ten's looking at Notre Dame or Oregon, it's pretty obvious that they're going to pick. And, it's just we're a small school out here. We're 20,000 kids, and a small media market for the most part in the 20s, depending on how you look at it. Portland, if you want to consider that, 25 media market or whatever. There's just not a lot of room. Now, at the same time, Oregon does come with something. They have that connection with Nike. They have some cachet. They have built a brand. But I just don't know if it's sustainable for them to go and play in the Big Ten, nor do I think they would be that competitive. I think that you might find yourself in the situation, if you were to play this year's Duck football team in the Big Ten schedule, you're probably losing 3 or 4 games. And you do that same exact team in the Pac-12 schedule, and you might be losing 1 or 2 games. So I do think the significant improvement of play goes into the Pac-12, going into the Big 12, or going to the Big 10, I should say. But I think the Big 12's in another situation as well. I think they added those 4 teams, and I don't think that makes them that much better. So the Pac-12 needs to look at the situation and say, does the Pac-12 basically adding the better Mountain West schools make them a better conference? I don't think so.
Yeah, it's all a matter of what level do you want to compete at? Do you want to continue just making these New Year's Six Bowls, which it has seemed over the Twitter and the coaching search and everything that the older section of the fan base is fine with, because, hey, we never did this when I was a kid. But to the people who have seen some of the success, it's like, yeah, we've had a lot of good compared to what Oregon's been before, but eventually you want to get to that next step. And if you stay in the Pac-12 or if you go to the Big 12, you're not going to have the resources to compete with the rest of the country. It's just not going to work. The money, Vanderbilt was getting $50 million a year more than what USC was getting. That's absurd. And it all happened because we made too long. The TV deal wasn't even horrible when it was negotiated, but it was too long. We didn't have any room to renegotiate once more money came into college football, and it just killed the Pac-12.
Yeah, and I would say not only was it too long, it was also short-sighted, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the mindset that they thought they were going to get they said they were going to get the Asian market. I mean, are you kidding me? They told us they were going to have our games played in Tokyo. I mean,
yeah,
there was some real BS thrown our way with the Larry Scott era. So,
and then once the Pac-12 network started looking like something real, they said, "Hey, let's pull all of its funding. Let's fire their best personalities, give them some Nokia flip phones for cameras, and just leave it at that."
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, it's a tough situation. I mean, I like the Pac-12. I think the Pac-12 has value. I think there's good teams out here in every single sport across the board. I think there's really good skills out here, but it's in a totally different mindset with the rest of the country. 1/3 of the population lives west of the Mississippi. So the idea is that most of the population's on the east, in the Midwest. They dominate every single year. And Mark, being a guy who, grew up with Ohio State football, you understand this better than anybody. Oregon just got here. Or Ohio State's been here. Michigan's been here. These teams set the stage of what college football is today. Oregon's a fairly new brand. And I just don't know if they have the cachet to actually, that the Big Ten would even want them. I'm at the point in my life where I don't feel like it's that big of an insult to think that Oregon is not at the top of the list for their conferences that they want. I mean, yes, they have a little bit of cachet here and there, but they're nowhere near the Los Angeles media market. It's not USC.
Yeah, right now, though, it's not about Oregon versus Notre Dame, because if the Big Ten adds Notre Dame, they're not going to stay at an odd number of teams. It's about Oregon versus Washington, or Oregon versus, I don't know what other teams they could be looking at. The ACC, it's almost impossible to get out of, but maybe they find a way to whirl like a Miami in there, or they're looking at Oregon and Stanford. We just have to be above those teams, which, God, I hope we're viewed above those teams, because if not, it's a struggle.
If we're talking football play on the field and we're talking about money and brand, after Notre Dame, I can't think of anybody that's out there available that's anywhere close to Oregon.
Well, Oregon's only 4 spots higher, I believe, in terms of revenue than Washington. Their TV market size is, I believe, around a dozen spots lower.
Yeah.
So that's the only argument. But Oregon's revenue is higher. Oregon's ratings are drastically higher. So there's arguments on both sides, but I don't know which way that a TV executive looks at it, because obviously Fox is making these decisions. And for the comment about NBC, NBC is Fox.